Coming to you live from Chattanooga.
Live from Chattanooga. It's April 18th. It's a good Monday. It's 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is the Crushing Iron podcast. We are episode 574.
574.
Hope you all had an amazing, if you celebrate it, Easter weekend. And if you did, you got dressed up in your fancies, in the pastels, rocked it out, probably wore your church hat, and had a great weekend. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Mike and I are back in the office. We're going to come to you today with a pretty standard cast, and later this week we'll do a little Ironman Texas preview because it is race week. For us, it's a team race that we planned in 2019, and then we all know how that sorted itself out. Nothing in 2020. It moved back to October, so we've got about 20 plus athletes racing this week down in the Woodlands, Texas. It's going to be toasty,
yes.
And it's going
to warm them up.
It's going to warm them up a little bit, and it's been a while. A lot of these athletes signed up for this race in 2019, which is kind of crazy to think about, but an amazing journey. And again, hope you all had a awesome weekend. First time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, that your time is valuable. So appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We'll do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We'll do race recaps. We'll also do race previews like we will on Thursday. For the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, both in life and also in training. And then we'll also talk about what our athletes are going through. We work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level athletes looking to their first sprint or even a 5K, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to head back to Kona, and everyone in between and from all over the world. We'll use the conversations and experiences we have with them, communication, to drive the topic of the day. We'll also head into our Facebook group, which we did a lot last week, which is Crushing Iron Group. If you're going to be a part of that awesome conversation, answer one simple question, let's right in. If you're in there, participate. Don't be a lurker. Don't just scroll and feed, and participate. We have a lot of awesome people in there willing to help you out and answer a lot of questions. So it really is an awesome community. That's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Man, that was one of your best.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was pretty good.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I like your shirt today.
Thank you.
Yeah, it makes you look lean and mean.
I'm getting lean, man.
Yeah, you look like it.
This can't be good, right?
What?
I mean, that constant light on your wrist with the garment. What is that?
I don't. We can't do this right
now. Okay.
We can't do
But
this.
Anyway, yeah, good shirt on. We had a few extras from the pre-order. I put them up online. They're for sale, but there's very limited, so you better get on it, and it might be too late by the time you hear this. But anyway.
Yeah, it probably will be. They'll be gone.
There's not many left. We just kind of ordered what we needed. But how you feeling?
I feel good. Listen, well, let me
we both, I think, had our biggest training weekend.
We did.
About 6 months.
We did. I headed down to Nashville for Easter and my old Mimi's birthday. And I'll tell a quick story about my Mimi.
All the candles.
she's 94. I mean, she's old.
I know.
And she's still kicking it though. She's still driving her Cadillac. She's still cruising. We went over there on I think Good Friday, and we're sitting there having, and she's old. I mean, she's obviously she's on her way out, and she can hold about a 2-minute conversation.
Yeah, she doesn't have time for your
No,
shit.
she doesn't. Nor does she really care. She's like, if she's going to spend her last, her last period on Earth, it's not going to be talking about, what's going on in my life.
Yeah, heard that one before.
Yeah, she's like, anyway, that's great, Robbie. And I'm like, I can say whatever I wanted to. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to lose a leg tomorrow. That's great. I'm really proud of you. Anyway, I'm talking really mid-sentence, and she goes, well, I got to go. I got my beauty appointment here in 30 minutes. And then she disappears and goes peeling out of the driveway in her little Cadillac coupe. All you can see is the fluff from her hair. I don't know how she sees over the hood. I don't have any idea. I don't know what she's getting permed because, hair sticks up like a typical old lady, like a see-through old school Jackson 5 kind of dude. I don't know what you're getting permed. It can't be any more reshaped, but that's what she does. So she drives herself down. I don't know how she mixed there and back, but she does, but God bless her. But we went down there this weekend. The weather was beautiful. I took my bike. A couple of the guys that are on the team and some OGs made a trip down to Natchez Trace, which is where we have our camp, and a great but challenging place to ride. They're getting ready for St. George here in about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. And I was like, yeah, I'll bring my bike down and ride for a little bit. Got there on Thursday, went out, rode a little bit. It was beautiful. It really was nice. But it was also a reminder of that my legs aren't necessarily underneath me. I got a run and swim in on Friday, headed out Saturday morning, and I got my legs ripped off me. We went out. We went out fairly easy on the way out. I think they're taking it easy on me because, listen, I don't have, and I think we may even go this way today. I've still got a decent amount of power. Like, I've been kind of hanging around. I still have a decent amount of power. It's my aerobic capacity that is just way behind. And so I can keep up for a certain period of time until my capacity just dwindles, and then you're just like burning all kinds of matches. We went out, we went way out, and also had my first flat of the year. Giving myself a mid B. I had a B plus because I had everything with me except for a tire lever. Thankfully, Chuck, limped that, but I got a change under 5, so I was pretty happy with that. It was a gator skin, which first of all shouldn't be flatting in the first place, and they were brand new anyway. Got a change, came back, and then I had to make this comment, because I'm in no shape to make comments, and we stop, refill the bottles, and there's this group that went like 5 or 6 minutes past us as we were refilling the bottles, and they're like, "There's no way we can catch them." And here I go, opening my big mouth. And I go, I bet we can. Like I've got any legs in stock to back this up with. So we peel out of the parking lot, and I didn't think they took it seriously. They laid down the fucking hammer. And I spent about 17, 18 miles, red line. Third wheel, red line. And they were just hammering it. I mean, and they'd alternate, it was 3 of us. Chuck and Wes, they would alternate back and forth doing a pull, and because we do like the whole.
You're just waving. I'm good.
I couldn't even wave. I was like, just hold tight, guys, hold tight. And I was like, I think I might, because we just swapped every mile because the mile markers, are like the same thing we usually do.
Yeah.
And when I'm in shape, and so they're just blazing it, and I was like, I could probably do a pull, and every time I'd go to pull, I'm like, I don't even know if I can make it up to the front.
Yeah,
because if I hop off a wheel, I'm done. See you later. And if I yell out something like I'm popped, they're probably never going to hear me, and I'm just dawn and dusted and getting blown out like hay in the wind. And so we caught a few people, and then finally about maybe 9 miles to go back to that main rest stop we always stop at. Is where we parked. And they did one final pull, and I said, "I'm popped. I'm done." And they're like, "All right, we'll slow down for the old coach guy who's just trying to get back in shape." They were also pushing it anyway. We cruised our way back, and they had 2 more hours to go. They had a huge ride, like 5,000 feet of climbing, 90 plus miles. I ended the day with almost exactly my normalized power for a 70.3 that I race.
Yeah,
and it felt it. Oh, did it feel it? But the thing I noticed the most was I was actually really, really happy that I was able to hold on for 2 hours and 45 minutes on that terrain. It was like close to 3,000 feet of climbing, and my power was pretty up. My heart rate was out the roof. We joked when we pulled in. I was like, guys, I'm shelled. My heart rate was high, and I got off and I saved him. Our Garmin goes, new threshold, right? So because I had basically 2 hours and 45 minutes of it. But that was the biggest. I was actually really happy with how I fueled. My fueling was actually pretty on point. And I gotta say, I was originally skeptical of the new EFS Pro flavors. I used to be a shockingly huge fan of the old EFS Pro cucumber. You were a cucumber aficionado.
I think that was the best thing they ever did.
And they've done away with it. It was limited line, but they had watermelon. So I bought a couple of new cans. Have you had it?
I've had it.
I think it's stellar. I mean, it's like a.
It's light. Is it light?
It's light. It's
that's what I like.
It's like a watered down watermelon Jolly Rancher, but it's solid. Anyway, I was happy with that. I was happy with the fact that I could at least, had a little bit of strength to hold on. I couldn't carry on a conversation because they kept trying to talk to me. And I mean, dear God, Chuck Knuth, he will carry on a conversation the entire time. He said more words the last 5 minutes than Wes and I would say on a 9-hour ride. And I'm like, I can't talk to you right now. I'm not aerobic. I know this is fun for you. I know this conversation, but I'm not aerobic right now. I'm like high zone 3. I can say one. I'm like thumbs up. Like, here we go. But it was, listen, as smashed as I was when I was done, it was a blast. And I've forgotten how much it reminded me back in the days when like we'd go out there and the group of us and we'd all show up at 6 o'clock. You showed up at 8 and we'd ride for a little bit and then just go out and hammer it on the way back home. And it was, while it's not, it was very spirited. It's just fun. It's a great place to ride. And I miss it. I miss getting out and doing things with other people and riding hard. But that was that. From a training standpoint, it was, hey, I still got some decent power in there, but my heart rate was at least 20 beats higher average than I know theirs was. And that's just like the general, you can race hard, you can do, Zwift race after Zwift race and just work on smashing it. But if you want to do really, really, really well at long distance and long course racing, you've got to be able to have an aerobic base because it can't take it out of you. It's because while I was somewhat pleased with and I didn't feel that bad the next day. I got up and ran the next day.
Yeah.
And, but it was if you'd asked me to run the day before, not going to happen. I'd have been the guy who, sprinted out of transition like half mile. Then as soon as I turned the corner, nobody could see me. Just going to cruise on with a little bit of walk. I was smoked, but it was fun. And this sounds like when we caught up yesterday, I came in for a little bit. It sounds like you, headed out on the old knobby tired mountain bike and did some grinding.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it sounds to me like you're almost ready to race.
Don't even.
You backed it up with a nice run, a little high in the heart rate, but you got it in you.
Way high.
Yeah, but that's riding out at the trace, maybe a flat course. Maybe you could do it.
Yeah, all downhill. Yeah, drafting. Yeah, I could do it. Do it.
Well, I mean, as we know, I'm seriously behind the chat 70.3 8 ball. And we had a talk, I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday. I was like, not much time here. Let's strategize. So we talked about it. And a while ago, I actually said I was going to be training at Olympic distance training plan. So that was the plan. And then, I went to Wisconsin for 10 days and I think I ran twice for 20 minutes. So I don't
keep
know
it loose.
What Olympic that is, but, so I'm just way out of it, but I had, I guess 4 days in a row now I've trained. So, and it's so interesting because
time to taper.
Sounds taper.
To taper.
I definitely know. That's the other thing he says, like, you're not going to need a taper.
You're not going to need a taper,
but I probably won't. But I'm getting older, so I do need to be fresh because that's an interesting thing too, right? Is like I hadn't ridden as far as I rode this weekend since maybe Chattanooga.
Probably. I think you're probably
right.
I
went out for 2 hours on the mountain bike on the river walk here, which is no, like Natchez Trace.
Yeah.
I think I had 700 feet or something like that, but I forced in a couple hill repeats and things like that. But to the point, it's kind of interesting because that is the longest ride I've had, and it actually felt pretty decent. Not I was on a knobby tire mountain bike. I wasn't like humping it, but I was pushing it.
Yeah.
And I felt fairly strong. So that's kind of interesting to your point, is I'm sure I didn't really look at my heart rate, but I'm sure it was probably up a little bit too. But, like we always talk about, some days if you're in decent shape and you take off like a week and then you can come back and have a really good ride, out of the blue. So I'm definitely not going to have a big taper, but I'm certainly going to be as fresh as possible for that week. But, I ran an hour on Friday and Sunday. So those are kind of longer runs for me as well.
Dude, don't peak too early.
Well, they were a little bit of run walky.
Yeah,
but I did do it yesterday. I went off that bike the next day. I got on the treadmill, and I like doing it on treadmill too because when I do these run walks, I have an interesting pyramid-y kind of thing I've been doing. I just increase it like every interval, like by 0.1 miles per hour, and I just kind of slowly build it up because I want to be in control. Because if I go out and start running outside, you know how that can go.
Yeah, it can go poorly.
It's better for me just to start slow. And I've been talking to a lot of people lately because we got some races coming up. We got Ironman coming up, and it's, some of them are having off the bike runs and things like that. And I've just been reiterating. It's like, hey, this is a good time to practice staying within yourself, because you can really jeopardize that run on the, in the first mile or two. If you feel good and you think you got it in, you're going to go out and the next thing you know, you're cooked.
Yep. And you bring up a great point, and this is true for everyone, that and I think you and I are just alike in this way, but a lot of people are different, is that we all lose specific types of your fitness base a lot quicker, right, than the other part. Like for me, I always lose my aerobic fitness first. I can still hang tight. I can still, you know, there was even like, maybe it was like a year or two ago, I had taken like, man, I don't know, like it was after I did kind of my virtual Texas 70.3 after it got canceled, like what, 2020. And I just blew my doors off that day and dug deep, burn a match. Then for about 6-7 weeks, I didn't train at all. I didn't do anything. It was Thanksgiving. It was a Christmas, and I didn't do anything. Then I hopped back on the bike one morning as I was kind of getting back. And then I don't know for what idiotic reason I did this for. This just goes to show you that, you know, just because I tell you to make smart decisions, it may not always do.
I mean, yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, and that's everyone. We're honest. And I went out and I ripped the same course I did virtually with higher watts than I did with no training, like in between. But I was done, right? I was absolutely smoked. My heart rate was like 15 beats higher than it was before. And so for me, that's what I lose first. I still have like I can still generate a high degree of power even after a little bit of time off. But when it comes to the amount of energy I have to expend to get it, it's enormous. Like it's so much different. And I think that's one of the things that I think we all kind of tend to forget, and that I think a lot of athletes are getting kind of swept up in these days is riding hard all the time. And while you have to include intensity, and there's huge benefit to adding, you know, sprinkling in a good bit of intensity in your riding, you have to be aerobically efficient. And if you're not aerobically efficient, then what you're going to be doing is it's going to be harder to fuel. You're going to fatigue quicker, and it's going to make the run off the bike that much harder, because even in Olympic distance, obviously 70.3 and obviously an Ironman is 95% plus aerobic. Okay. And so while you might be able to rip off a hard bike, you're not going to be able to run efficiently because you're going to have smoked yourself. So for me, when I have to get back to kind of doing what I call the basics is, you know, maybe for me, when I get back into it, it's, you know, every other week or maybe once a week, do a pretty hard ride. But the other ones, you know, I've still got, if you will, I've still got a decent layer of icing, right? Or intensity still on there, but it's laying on a bed of crumbs. I don't really have much. So to me, it's like, you know, I could maybe add a sprinkle or two here, but what I really want to do is layer in this huge amount of cake if I need to, and go back to going back to basics. Some athletes are the opposite. They lose power really, really, really quickly. They can't go as high. Their aerobic base generally stays around. So again, everyone is different in that aspect. So it's important to know what kind of athlete you are, and you kind of come back in. But it's always best, in my opinion, as you kind of get back into a training routine, or this is the time of year where you're ramping things up. You'll see a lot of athletes right now, and this is like the double-edged sword with coaching during the. I think maybe you and I had this discussion last week. It was that, you know, November, December, January, February, March, and now April. For some people, are still getting freaking snow. You have to be very delicate and massage the point you're trying to get across with athletes over the quote unquote fall and winter months. Yes. Do you want them to do a lot of aerobic work? Sure. Is it more than likely going to bore some of them into just not wanting to ride their bike at all inside? 100%. Mm-hmm. So you have to kind of be creative, but also keep attention, because that's when people will lose it the most. Like the last 3 weeks, I've heard more people talk about burnout, and I need to get outside so bad. Like, cause a lot of these places are having, like, I got a picture this morning from an athlete. It was like 3 inches of snow. Like it's late April. Like, what are we doing here? And they're just like, I got to get outside. Like they're miserable. They're like, if they see everybody else riding their bike outside, I'm not doing you favors, posting pictures of the Natchez Trace in the sunny 70s, but still people are done. Like they're done being inside. Right. And then, so I think that's just one of those things where you have to recognize what's needed. And then this is the time of year, if you can, and not just can, and are willing to get outside and put some aerobic miles in, this is the best time of year to do it, because you need to get back in the routine of just being outside. I was sore when I woke up Sunday morning, in my core and my lower back, like just areas that I know were strictly from riding outside, riding in a group, moving left, moving right, descending, being a little more tense than normal. Like that's the perfect time to get in this aerobic base and miles, because you're kind of working both. You're working kind of reacclimating yourself into getting back outside, but you're also getting the aerobic base you may have neglected in favor of keeping your attention span kind of in queue during the off season by doing 2, 3, or maybe all your rides with a lot of intensity, just because if you weren't going to get on your bike in the first place.
And back to your test or your recreation of the race course. How long of a break was that again?
Like 6-7 weeks.
Okay, so yeah, I think I'm kind of the same way, because I can usually get on that watt bike or something and push pretty high watts for a day. And, but like you're saying, man, it's like my challenge is always aerobic. And it's just like, so as I go into this, I'm really kind of thinking about things like, the upper body stuff and being long and strong and flexible on my swim and really working that. And because it is, especially, it's usually, for me, it's always been the upper body on the bike. That's the problem. And, and then of course that translates into your run, because, you have you're sore and your motion isn't quite there and as relaxed. The one big thing I'm really thinking about too is this idea of relaxing, because as you take time off, or there's two things: you take a lot of time off and you go out and run. I think most people are tense, especially on the bike too, but then as you get closer to race time, you get more tense too, because now it's like you're trying to, nail everything, and it's like down to the letter and trying to be this and that and whatever. But I'm just all about, how do you go out and work out? I mean, just like literally control your body and your mind. And that's why I like just flirting with inching things up here and there, even if it's just an endurance ride. And like it was the other day, I went out cruise for a while, about an hour on that mountain bike. And then I went out, and then I was like in the middle, I'm like, I just did a few hill repeats and things like that. And then on the way back, I just, it's same course, just inched it up a little bit, but for me, it's like, I knew when I started this sport, I knew I started to understand things when I understood like long sections of intervals or tempos and the ability to kind of control that. And I also think that's also things that tense people up, because you're staying with, you're doing the same exact thing. So that's why I've always been a fan of just like mixing up, we always throw in runs with strides and things like that. And I think to me, I like to do strides, quote unquote, on the bike too, just to kind of mix up the movement and loosen up your body. And I just think it helps you relax, because if you just have to go out and do 3 hours at this certain exact thing, man, it's like really hard. That's even on the treadmill, man. I just move it back and forth a little bit, not much, like to the point where I know I'm really under control, but I'm going just a hair faster or a hair slower maybe, or whatever, moving it back and forth. And I just think there's a lot of value in sort of that variation within the same thing, within the same space.
Right. It's about creating or keeping economy, right? Efficiency, right? So you call about strides or big gear work or high cadence work, because you can have a lot of power, but if you're not efficient, you don't have the full amount of power that you really have, right? Because you're not using it to the best of its ability. You're losing it, right? You can be a really, really fast runner, but if you have poor economy, you're having to use more power and energy to go the same speed if you would just work on better economy. Like the Boston Marathon's on right now. Like if you're watching that, the better runners at the front of the field, they look effortless, right? You're like, they look like they're running so slow in first split 450, right? Like, because they're insanely efficient, right? Their running economy is perfection, right? They get a 1-to-1 ratio of whatever they get out. Other athletes might get a 2-to-1, right? You're putting in two pieces of effort, you're getting in one back. At the top, and the same thing goes with swimming. This is where you see it the most, I think, that swimming and running. Everybody sees athletes all the time. You watch the Olympics, you're like, God, they look like they're going so slow, or they're not effortless. Okay. They're super efficient, right? They're getting the most out of everything they do. They're not fighting it. And that's just one of those things where you have to you have to kind of, again, that's why it's always great to add in strides, 30-second, bursts here and there to maintain good form and not get sloppy with what you're doing while still generating an aerobic, increasing aerobic fitness in the things that you do. Right. And that's just, it's hard for athletes, I think, to understand and really kind of buy in, I think, to the importance of aerobic work, right? Because it's the most boring type of work that you do, right? Because there's no fluff. You're not doing anything spectacular. You don't have to dig deep. You just have to ride and run and swim and do a lot of easy work, and from an energy expenditure standpoint, which is all racing is, right? From the time you top in the water, time you cross the finish line, it's about how much energy you spend and where you spend it, because you only have a finite amount on that day, right? And then the amount of energy you have is also affected by, and how quickly it depletes is also affected by the temperature, right? And the conditions, like, your energy is going to deplete a hell of a lot quicker on maybe a course like, St. George, which is, physically and, I would consider environmentally, challenging. Same for Texas, right? Maybe non-wetsuit legal, no wetsuit, which is going to create a lot more energy coming out for most people who maybe dependent on it not, or to being able to wear a wetsuit. It might be a lot hotter on the bike and windier, more energy. It's going to be hotter on the run, more energy, right? So there are certain things which drain that battery, if you will, a lot quicker than us. Then you go to a course like maybe Ironman Arizona or Florida, and you might get, pancake flat salt water with a wetsuit, no wind, 60 degrees, and then flatness. Your energy is going to be able to be a lot easier spread out on a course like that, right? You're getting not freebies, but you're getting it's much more representative from like a one-to-one from an energy standpoint. And I think that the best way to kind of visualize using aerobic fitness is maybe an analogy or the importance of how draining it is, but how much easier it is, and vice versa. If you're standing here and your boss comes out and says, all right, I want you to stack, however many pounds of rock. You've got a pile of gravel, pea gravel next to you, right? That's about 5 feet away, and he just wants to move it over. Or you have, 100 yards away, you've got stones, right? They're bigger. There's going to take more time to get there. It's going to take more effort to do it, and it's going to take more out of you, but they're bigger, right? And so you have that illusion of, but I can do that. And then after about, I'm going to do that. I'm going to hustle it. I'm going to get these big ones. I'm going to stack this high. And you're going to take all this extra effort to run there and run back with this heavier weight, more stress. It's higher intensity. By the time you do about 5, you're going to look over, and the guy who's chosen to just continuously grab handfuls of the pea gravel is going to be like 10 times as high as you are. And he's not going to be breathing hard, right? Because it's efficient, it's easier, and you can still kind of get to where you want to go by doing it that way, but it's not as quote unquote fun. But you know what is fun? Being efficient, right? And being able to, and that's when things are clicking for a lot of athletes when they use words like efficient, right? Or this seemed a lot easier, or my breathing was so under control, or I looked down and I thought I was running this, but I was really running this. And I just feel really fit, I'm feeling, because that's what it is. Like general aerobic fitness it should be the framework, honestly, it is the framework of all things endurance. And that's just something that I think we neglect a lot, but can, again, rear its ugly head, because that's what's left, right? You only have a definite amount of anaerobic fitness and glycogen, all these things you can use once you start to get like, zone 3 and zone 4. What you want to do is, if you can be as efficient as possible, you have a much longer, a much wider bandwidth of energy to give. And that's just, again, it's hard, but that's why hopefully most of you are about to get some, a lot more sunny and warm weather to get outside, ride easy, ride long, get as much as you can, and use that, especially if you've been one of those athletes who's been hammering it right and left. And then you figure out, which is, those are the same athletes like, I've just been on, trainer road or doing these, and I'm not getting any faster. I'm just getting more tired, right? Because they're burning the wick every time. They're not taking a minute to increase the size of the candle. They're just trying to, again, like we talked about last week, they're just burning already burnt matches until at some point you're just going to set on fire your fingertips.
Well, with that stone and pebble, have you been reading my Zen books? That was like a very Zen.
No, I've just been washing my oatmeal bowl.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to an athlete this morning on Training Peaks about, a very difficult 3-hour ride that he just did. And I think there's a very interesting part of that, because I was talking about how, that's going to give you some more fitness, right? But for real, the lesson in that is really to understand what you were just talking about, right? Because you go over and back and push and go. So it's like, where do you find that, like the line of no return? You really get familiar with that over time, especially a long 3-hour bike where there's a lot of intervals and different stuff going on. And that's to me, that's the value of those things, almost even more and above the fitness of it, because in a race, you're not going to, be doing these crazy cadences and, like pushing these serious watts. I mean, but you're going to have to start understanding that fringe, and then you can, like I was telling him, it's like when I'm in a race, I don't really go by power that much. So I'm a RPE guy. So I can really tell in my quads, like if I'm pushing the edge of that, and then I just back it down a little bit, and then I kind of find that stuff. But it's important because you have to, people are always like, how do I know if I'm pushing enough on the bike, right? And especially if you're not doing power, you don't have a number and you're not like, married to that. So how do you know? Well, you have to understand it, right? And I think the only place you can understand it from is going there and testing it and figuring out what does work and what doesn't work. But because you have like a race shouldn't be balls out, especially long distance races, but you definitely have to flirt with like effort, like you don't want to go like just go out and cruise it at 60% or something like that. How do you get to 70%, like on a 70.3 or 75 or whatever? So those kind of things I think are huge,
And the more you train, the longer you do it, the better understanding you have of the size of your tank, right, and how it's best being used, right? So I've done this for a long time, and so I knew when I was riding on Saturday, when I said that I had popped, I didn't just pop. Like I had popped a little bit before that, but I also knew if I don't just like rein it back in now, then the speed in which I'm going to make it back to the car is going to be 3 miles an hour slower than if I just stopped right now. Right. Yeah. And most athletes just will burn it to the wick and then hope they can limp their way back home. Well, I didn't want to limp back home, nor did I want to limp back home alone.
But walking in those bike shoes.
Yeah, I was like, I can go this much longer at this intensity, but that's it, right? But I can cruise it back home at a lower level. And I think every athlete, the more you train, the more you race, the different kinds of workouts you do, can know these. And that's why it's so important to know your body and know what it's capable of, and most importantly, know what efforts you can hold at for a sustained period of time. Right. Like
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
That is irreplaceable. It is priceless. And 8 out of 10 athletes don't have it because they stare too much at their device. They are too worried about what their watch says, what their power says. They stick to it on both ends, right? They'll push too hard when they should be holding back, or they're holding back when they should push too hard, right? You should know how much, and even to this day, because I've been doing this for so long, that I can still, when we got done with the ride, I said, yeah, my average watts are about 200, and I said, I bet my normalized power is around 218, 219. I just felt it. I was like, that's pretty much what this feels like. Downloaded it. Wait a minute. Normalized power, 218. Like I know what effort feels like because I've been doing it long enough, but I also, if I'm going to trust one thing, it's going to be I'm going to go with what I feel, right? And I know what equates to what, right? And again, a great skill every athlete should do is go run, 4 miles, 5 miles, run for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it is, without looking at your watch. And when you get done, every time when you get done, guess what your pace is? Yeah, that felt like about 8:27s, 8:30s. And if it's lower, okay, that's not too bad, right? Mm-hmm. Do things that, and I had an athlete, this is a great example. I had an athlete 2 weeks ago who's a phenomenal runner. He was doing 2 duathlons back to back, and he placed well. He did awesome. But he was like, I just don't think I have it on the bike right now. I don't think I have it. I think I'm pushing, but I don't know that I'm pushing. You know, what can I do? What can we change? I said, let's do this. I said, let's do an exercise. We got this race coming up this weekend. Why don't I want you to ride with your watch and with your bike computer, but I want it hidden. I don't want you to see it. And I want you to absolutely blow yourself up. Right. And then when you're done, I want you to write out or verbalize or note take, whatever it is, how you felt it was. Right. And then we want to look back at the data and see, does it match? Right. Because what you could, like, and you see this sometimes with athletes that maybe frequently ask if they push hard, like, yeah, I really hammered it home today and I brought it. And you look down and they're like, well, you were pushing like, 78, 80%. That's not bringing it. Like, that's not, not to say that you didn't feel that, but there's a disconnect in the output and what your version of the input actually is. So he actually went out and he absolutely obliterated himself. And he got done and we looked at things and he obliterated himself. So but his thing was a mental switch, which was, I just have to be willing to dig that deep, which if you're, you don't see it a lot. Like some people think it's easy to transfer. If you're an accomplished runner, it's easier for you to dig deep, right? On 5Ks and miles and half marathons, because you know exactly what those signs are that are tell you that you're going. You know how much longer and faster and harder, you can go. But it's not the same, right? Because blowing yourself up or going deep on the bike feels very, 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 very different than it does in the run. The run is more of a whole body pain thing. And then you compare both of those to swimming. Again, totally different ball game in terms of what feels like to go all out in swimming versus the other two. So you can't know what it feels like. We're like, I know what it feels like to go all out on the bike. They're all different, right? And so in order to race, you have to know what it feels like on all three. And then you have to, again, hedge your bet and plan for, well, if it feels like this, then what's it going to feel like for the next one, right? And it's a learned skill that you can really only get by training and racing a lot. And when you do that, do exercises or take specific training sessions where the goal is to feel it out, right? And you're either going to implode or you're going to be like, I had way more left. Like I knew I did. I reined it back to when I was afraid, or you dug one more notch deeper than you've ever dug before. And this was his comment. It was like, he said, I dug a lot deeper than I ever had before. And I didn't think I could, but I had that extra gear. So it wasn't that your bike power was lacking. It was that you've been using 4 gears instead of 5. And so once you're now able to use that 5th gear, now he'll be able to go back and kind of go through his, pain, effort, Rolodex and think, am I there yet? No, it doesn't feel like I'm there yet. Now I'm there. Right. And then that's when you've hit it. But again, you can't, and again, it's not a number. It's not a pace, right? It's not a data point. It's what you feel. And the more you race long course, the more you have to understand that it has to be not 100% by feel, but especially for the run, in my opinion, unless you're trying to slow yourself down out of the gate, it has to be on, what do I feel like I can sustain for X amount of time? And that is a simple yet complex calculation that every endurance athlete needs to be able to do.
Yeah. And it can be based on energy that you feel, or it can be based on, pain, right? So it's like, how do you get through the pain and how do you calculate how much energy you think you have left? I want to go back to how you're saying that sometimes, if it turns into a wetsuit swim, you're going to be able to save a little bit of energy because theoretically your swim will be assisted in a way by some buoyancy. But this is what happens too, right? How many times have you seen, it's a wetsuit swim, I'm going to go even faster now. So it's like people or it's a perfect day, I'm going to go faster, right? So instead of letting the day kind of unfold and letting your conditions give you a faster race, you're trying to go faster. So you end up blowing up because of that, right? Now I go back to my fastest Ironman ever. I was sick. Like I had a cold or something the day before several years ago. And I went into that race going, all right, well, I'm going to have to chill. And I think inadvertently it gave me that efficient, perspective on things. And I just paced it really well. And I felt, I felt strong to my limit, but I didn't feel so strong that I was going to go out and blow it out, So I think that, when you go into a race and it's like perfect conditions, you most likely, if you just take the same strategy, you'll go faster rather than thinking, oh, I can go faster today because it's nice out or whatever. I think, it's just like you're saying, the seasonal EPO, it just sort of happens versus don't force it to happen. Because I've seen that with wetsuit swims. It's like, well, I'm going to really rip this swim today because I got the wetsuit. And then you end up going out of your zone and out of your comfort level too early in the race. And the next thing you know, that starts snowballing through everything.
It's one of those things where, it's about what you're getting in return, right? Like you see this all the time. And again, we'll talk about this when we do the Ironman Texas preview, but if you're heading into a headwind, you see so many athletes choose to fight it, right? Because they want to maintain speed, right? That's all they're concerned about. They're not riding by power or effort. They're concerned about speed. So you're clicking 200 watts and your 200 watts is giving you 20 miles an hour. Well, if you get a headwind, guess what most athletes do? 220 watts so I can maintain 20, right? And they're fighting against the wind. They're not, and again, even for athletes who don't go back, instead of realizing, okay, what am I getting in return? Because again, we're going back to energy and how we spend it on race day, because you want to cash it out slowly, right? You don't want to just cash all at the beginning and then, and live off pennies the rest of the race day. You want to cash in your hundreds and your 20 spots at the end of the race. What happens is that so many times on the bike, you see athletes, that are fighting against the wind or getting out of the saddle on hills or trying to catch, a group in front of them or trying to pass 5 people they think are drafting, and they burn these matches. And what happening is they might spend an extra $200 to get to T2 about 3 minutes faster than the guy or girl who spent 56, right? And then they're down $144, right? Of energy to spend, right? They're down some cash, right? But and the person who is, maybe 5 minutes behind them, making it rain, baby. The first, half marathon, as they pass the guy who decided to drop $200 bills, on the last, 30 miles on the bike, right? It's because it's not just about it's not just about the amount you have to spend. It's about how you disperse it, how often you spend it, when you choose to spend chunks, when you choose to save a little, when you choose to maybe invest a little bit and save it for, later on in the race, and then how much you get in return, right? And so many, I'll use another example we can all kind of get behind and understand right now. A lot of athletes on the bike are getting caught up in inflation. They're going to go out and they're going to spend, an exorbitant amount of money for something that, in 6 months might cost half of that, but they want it right now. I want it right now. They want that feeling. I want to pass these people on the bike. I want to hold on to my 530 bikes because that's what I have today. I don't care how hot. I can feel myself overheating. I can feel how hard I'm fighting against the wind. I'm going to spend 50. I know I'm probably only going to get $10 back, but still I'm going to spend 50. And that's, you're going to end up being what? When you get to the run, you're going to be in the red, right? You're going to be at a deficit when you hit the run. You're going to be bankrupt. You're going to be cashed out. You're going to have to go try to borrow a loan from the first aid station to try and make your way to the finish line. And guess what? You might get a loan from the first one, but guess what? Interest rates are going up. So it's going to be even more painful as you continue on. Again, it's going back to what we talked at the beginning. It's not always one-to-one, right? You don't spend, $1 of energy and get a minute back, right? You could, some days you might spend, if you're being super efficient, sometimes it might even come out to being worth, I'm going to spend $1. I might get $5 back. I might not get it right now, but I might get it back at mile 20 of the run. And that's when, you get to be the guy or girl walking the finish and chute, making it rain as you slow mo it down, spending all the dollar bills you might have left in your pocket. Or you might be the person at mile 20 asking, with styrofoam cup that says, any tips will help, asking for change. So it's about how you spend it, but you have to know, right? And you can't let and the same thing, it's applicable to spending and finances. You got to put your ego aside. And your impulse aside that might say, go now, do it now. You're like, maybe I'll just wait a little bit. Maybe I should be a little more conservative, right? Is it worth the risk? Probably not. And that's what's going to set you up for the best possible situation. And yes, no one's ever said, I ended up this race a little too cash heavy. Yeah, they're always like, at least they're usually say I spent it too early, right? So, just think about that as again, from the moment you get in the water, right? And understand that if you planned on, an Ironman Texas or even a St. George, like if you planned on it being wetsuit legal, then I guarantee you 9 out of 10 athletes at some point, spans of weeks or once a week, we're like, I cut this one short. It's wetsuit legal. I got this. I'm going to get some freebies, right? I'm going to give, I don't have to put in and invest my money and my energy right now on a hard workout and gaining fitness because I'm going to get a handout, right? On race day, I'm going to get a government wetsuit handout on race day. So you know what I need? This is your Warren Buffett triathlon cast. I'm going to get a handout. Or I'm going to get a wetsuit. And then you show up, right, and swim on race morning, and what are you missing? Your swim stimulus check. You're missing it, and you know what? You're screwed. You're walking up to race morning empty-handed. So you, again, on a serious note, you have to understand from an energy standpoint, what's happening when I get in the water is I train to be in the water for let's say for a full Ironman. I train to be in the water for a minute 10, right? With a wetsuit. Spending only, $100. Now I'm probably gonna have to spend 150 and I'm going to be in the water longer. Right. So this, again, it's math, but it's introspective, right? Math and how you understand your body and how you can spread things out, across weights. And no one wants to, you're making peanut butter and jellies. No one wants, a really thin layer of peanut butter. They want it thick, baby. They want it thick. And don't bring me that crunchy shit either.
Well,
where are you going to go with that?
You can't really do much with that, but I totally get it, man.
A penny for your thoughts, maybe?
It's like when they shut down the dam here in Chattanooga in the swim. Everybody's, I've done that before. I did that here once when I got the current. I'd just swim a little bit. I'll be cruising, and then they shut her down, and the next thing you know, you're begging for help at 500 yards off the shore. But I like that analogy, man. It does. It comes down to that, right? It's like, well, how are you going to spend? I mean, if you've got, how many people really, truly speed up at the end of an Ironman, right? It just doesn't happen.
Or just hold speed.
Yeah, right? That's the thing is, right, we talk about that a lot. It's sort of this, get into your run and then settle into an all-day pace. And then, do systems check. Like for the next, 18 miles, just settle into your all-day pace if you can do it. And then at mile 20, then it's like, maybe you'll just stay right where you're at. If you can hold that all-day pace, and that all-day pace becomes, more and more energy and more effort. And it's just naturally, I think that it's just so interesting to me because I think a lot of people think that means go faster, but how you always talk about a race evolving means you're just starting to burn more and more effort towards the end to stay in the same range. Yep. But most people, whoever, negative splitting an Ironman marathon, we've talked about this before, is like, wow, nice goal.
Right. It's like, well said. Nice goal.
I mean, good.
Even split. The even split is the negative split of the Ironman marathon.
Yeah. And even split can be 30 seconds either way. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, or even, I almost feel like for me, it's been, if I can hold that second mile pace, that 30 seconds more, that feels like a hell of an even split to me.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? But it's usually about a minute. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. I'm just saying, I probably spent too much cash on the bike.
Yeah. Or, and again, we'll end on this last little bit of fiscal advice from the two guys you shouldn't take it from, is a lot of you, what you're doing is on the bike, you know what you're doing? You're spending money you ain't got.
Yeah.
Because you didn't train enough, right? You're walking, you're hopping on the bike
and you don't have patience.
Right.
It's thinking, like, get this shit over.
Thinking you got, right? But it's like giving Hayden money. Right, for his birthday. He ain't saving it. He's going straight to Target to drop it in the Lego aisle. That's exactly what he's doing. He's not going to save it.
To Target?
Straight to, he's like, I think if I can afford this. I'm like, dude, you can't afford that. I gave you $5. That costs $78. You can't afford that. Most of you are going to be like Hayden in the Lego aisle at Target. Like, you're spending money you don't have on the bike because you didn't train enough, right? You didn't train enough. And so you're going into a race thinking, I got, it's like all the memes you see of like the real funny HGTV shows where like the guy's like, all right, my budget, here's what I want, here's what I want for my dream home. And it's like $1 million like in reality. And they're like, what's your budget? My budget's $250 to $350. And they're like, but I want 6 bedrooms on the beach, 4 baths, perfect landscaping and a pool. Budget $250,000. You're like, it might get you the garage door these days. That's what people do. They hop on the bike. You're spending money and cash you ain't got. Hope you enjoyed our fiscal and training advice today. Like we said, we cover it all. We'll do some bike and run specific podcasts. We'll cover the Dow and everything in between. We'll do a Texas recap, or not recap, a Texas course preview coming up, and then I'm heading down on Wednesday. Excited to see everybody down there. Say hi if you see me. Looking forward to hanging out with all of our athletes and watching a pretty awesome race. And there's a pretty solid pro field. Not too heavy because most of them are going for St. George, but it should be fun. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's a one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. Check in the gear tab, see what we got, and support us. That's the best way you can support our podcast, is to rep some of our great gear. And if you have any questions at all for Mike, you can always get a hold of him, CrushingIron@gmail.com. Or if you need anything from me specifically, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, man. Thanks for that great fiscal advice.
You got it, man.
Next week, I will give bad crypto
info. Crypto advice. Tune in next time.
Crypto analogies to this triathlon.